remember or even really know or understand is that in the last days of second edition, D&D was on its way out. D&D was dying. People were not playing D&D anymore. Sales were, just in the toilet. Things were bad. Things were maybe more dire than anybody ever really let on outside of the building. And so you had this climate where you had a lot of people who had an affection for the game. It's just that no one was really buying. The people who were playing with, notebooks full of house rules, and nobody was playing the same version of the game. And so, in a lot of ways, regardless of whether third edition was good or not, it was just a revitalization. It was sort of bringing everyone, back into the D&D fold, to put it that way. It was making it so that not, everyone was playing a more similar game. Everyone sort of eagerly jumped onto that bandwagon because, frankly, I know that there are exceptions to this, but frankly, the vast majority of the audience had either grown so tired of second edition or they just, hated it altogether. That third edition was a breath of fresh air to them. But there was another thing too, and that is that right around that time, when it was released, was right at the perfect time for like the guys who played D&D, in the 80s when D&D was really big, but then they went to college or whatever and they stopped playing. It was right at the right time for them to say, "Oh yeah, D&D. My friends and I used to play that, and that was a blast. I'm gonna check that out." Third edition was kind of a way for a lot of you to say, "Hey guys, remember D&D?" And so it had those things, and plus those guys also, had kids, and they said, "Hey," they had money. We found that a lot with third edition. A lot of people were suddenly saying, "Hey, this is something that I can introduce to my, my 9-year-old kid and whatnot." So, in a lot of ways, the success of third edition was kind of a perfect storm of situations. It was to the existing audience, it was water to the man crawling through the desert, and to the people who weren't playing anymore, it was suddenly a flare saying, that reminded them of the fun that they had back when they were much younger. So the challenges today are now you've got an audience that, at least from my perception, I don't have their market research or anything, but it seems like people are still pretty happy with the current edition. There are quibbles, there are problems with it. I'm certainly not going to say that there aren't, but it's a different kind of climate as far as that goes. And then plus the guys who suddenly have the nostalgia factor, well, we've already gone through that cycle, and it's only been 8 years since then, or when a game comes out, it'll have been 8 years. And so you're not going to capture that. So the challenge, I think, is suddenly a challenge that we never really had. We almost, in a way, we had to sell third edition, second edition players to convince them to convert and whatnot. But now I think that's a much, much greater challenge. They have the advantage that the audience the existing audience is much bigger than it was, right? So they've got a whole lot more people to talk to when they, get up on the podium and say, "Here's what we're doing with the new edition." But it's going to be a little bit harder to sell.
Well, kind of a follow-up question. In the presentation they did yesterday about the new 4th edition, they put a lot of emphasis on the new technologies. Access to the internet, the insider, you can unlock something, e-version of their book available. What is your take on those new technologies versus like paper and pen gaming?
Well, nothing that can be designed digitally is ever going to replace, in my mind, the fun of sitting around an actual real table with your actual real friends, making actual real bad jokes. That's it's always going to be a again, it's a difficult sell, I think. But I also know, I understand that there are a lot of people out there who can't find the time to play in a regular game. They can't find, or their game group is all moved away, or, whatever. And so this will be a godsend to them. This will allow them to keep playing the game in a way that, they would just have to give up role-playing games without it. So, for the people who it will be really necessary, I think it's a great innovation.